thank you so much to everyone who put in all the effort for putting up posters, flyers, or everything that you did out there. It wouldn't have happened without you, because to say I'm a busy man, I haven't got the capacity to do that. But all my colleagues are much the same. So yeah, it's over to you for that. This was just put together. You've all seen the consultation, so I don't need to sort of go over that. But it ran through October, November, with 460 responses. I have got, and I can share with anyone who hasn't already seen it, anonymised responses, which shows everything that everyone has actually written. Because as well as the sort of tick box exercise, we were asking for people to really give their views, and that's what's gone into a lot of the sort of summary that I've done. We all know the sort of spaces we're talking about. This is the original reserve. That was designated by my predecessor, Ellis Selway, who still works for Environment Agency in the area. And then, yeah, we designated this area, and this is the area we'd like to extend our designation to. Now, on the designation, the vast majority of responses was to yes, please, do go for a stronger, higher level of statutory protection for this space. And that's what a local nature reserve designation does. It's statutory, so when it comes to planning applications and that, there are other local plan policies that kick into play. So it gives it a bit of protection. It also really raises its status for wildlife. And we also have to have a management plan that is reviewed by Natural England. They'll give their input, and also then it's sort of, yeah, not that we're not committed, but it commits the council even more to managing the space for wildlife. But local nature reserve designation is also very much about people and wildlife. It's very much together. We have hit a little bit of an issue with the designation. Our legal colleagues are looking at it at the moment, but when this piece of land came over to us, there's something in this corner where the land hasn't been registered quite right. I'm sure it's not an issue, it just takes a long time to sort out. So until such time as that is addressed, we can't go any further at the moment with the designation, but it's an administration thing, and so we're all busy, so it'll clock on. But eventually, once we can define that boundary, then myself and Vic, the local nature reserve officer, can submit the necessary sort of paperwork for us to declare. It will need to go to a full council for approval, and then we can declare it from a local ecology perspective. So back to the findings. So yes, this was the sort of the do you support the LNR designation? And you'll note we've got some no's there, but if you're reading the responses, the majority of that was not a no, absolutely not. It was a no because we don't think there's quite enough access left for people on the space, particularly the sports pitches, as are. So a lot of responses, and it was a common thread all the way through, was yes, please more nature, yes, please more habitat. But we feel from the sort of outline plan we showed, and I did only show one of a number that the Friends did originally present, and I perhaps should have allowed people to choose different ones. We've probably got slightly different thoughts on things, but in general, everyone was saying yes, like more habitats, like the area in front of the B flats to be diversified, but the sports pitches perhaps don't lose quite so much. So there's activity, there's space still for people to let their dogs run a bit more without fear of them upsetting a small foot, kick around, or people having a picnic, that kind of thing. So really taking that on board, and I think the designs that we can come through will reflect that. But generally 93% in favour of the further designation. This was just a fun thing I found you could do with, it's basically the larger the words, the more often they appeared in all the responses, and it just gives a sort of summary of what people do value, and it's very much this space, space to enjoy, space to walk, the nature, the wildlife, dogs are there, it's great for the local dog walking. It hasn't got the livestock on. If you're walking your dog and you're not keen on coming into close contact with the grazing animals, and it also, people are pointing out, it hasn't got the bikes whipping across it as well. So it's very valuable for access and these different sorts of spaces. You've also got chest and rec, obviously, for more formal and play. So you've got a variety of spaces, and people are really thinking about the wildlife, the space, and the openness here. Moves down a bit. gave few very broad options of the sort of changes that people could see, and very much in favour of the habitats, and less so in sort of more seated, more signage, that kind of thing. And that's reflected in the commentary again, in that people don't want to see the space urbanised. They want the access, and people pointed out specific access things like, we know that the wet woodland flooding is sometimes very muddy for extended periods, that kind of thing. But it's more like, well, if that's the case, is there other paths that people could use whilst it's flooded, rather than putting boardwalks everywhere and raising paths and things like that? So that's quite an interesting sort of one to think about. But I think a bit more, people did say more sort of educational and interpretive materials. This was the plan that we did go in, and you can see, so this is existing reserve, bit in front of the V flats. This is the new backwater channel we created. It's been really successful, and the reed beds established nicely. We've got things like sort of reed warbler on territory here, which was sort of, for me, reed warbler and water vole were the two sort of real key species to get in here. I knew it was working if they're there, and they're both there now. We had a lovely video shared with us recently, which I shared with Tony. Hopefully it might get up onto the website, friend's website, of a water vole feeding along here. So I think these habitats can definitely be extended, and the most obvious place, and probably the easiest place, will be to sort of drag them further into the sort of the meadow bit that's here, and perhaps push that meadow further up here. But then where we put the kick around sort of picnic area, perhaps look to increase that more sort of into that area. So push it all up a bit, have much more fluffier, woollier, more rounded sort of edges. We've got the planting, which I'll talk about in a bit, sort of going in here. So the broad sort of principles are still the same, and there is potential options to have some more water over here as well as the trees. Limitations to that are, when this land was adopted, we've got access through the Vi site for maintenance machinery, but that's over sort of block semi-permeable paving and through pretty tight residential streets. So the idea of big earth moving equipment through there is I don't think would be very appealing to many. And when the land was taken on, or when the bridge went in, we never really thought enough about access to come from here into here. We never had an official access here, and that was taken away from us during a planning application in here. So again, big earth moving in here at the moment is quite tricky, but that's not to say we won't be able to do small things. We've got the ditch coming in here, so potentially we can let more water into this area with ditches and scrapes and things. I'll come on to a bit more about how that might happen in a bit. We'll move through the rest of the consultation. So this was around that bridge, that access I was talking about coming through Logan. So the need to really have, both for maintenance of what we've got now, but also for any future sort of earthworks, we need some sort of access through our own or city council right of way. So we've got Logan's Way here, and there is already pretty much a ride through here. It's made up by sort of willows that do sort of oversail a little bit over the hedge and things here, which, to be honest, if we don't coppice in the next few years, they'll actually split open anyway. They're pretty weak trees. So to coppice and pollard along here, create more of a ride through here, so not a surface thing, but a grassy ride, and then have a bridge through here. The bridge itself needs to be fairly strong, so we're looking at potentially sort of 20-ton vehicles, but it's obviously not very wide, but it would need to be strong, and that would sit top of bank to top of bank, so it would bridge the culvert. We checked with Cambridgeshire, our local water authority, and they wouldn't accept the sort of culvert pipe filling there. It would need to be a bridge. So we have got funding for that allocated, and I'm looking to put a planning application in sort of February, March time. So what I'll do is I'll pass that draft sort of planning application, design and access statement to yourselves before it goes to a wider public consultation, so I can have some sort of feedback from the group to see if you think it needs any sort of tweaking. So that's the bridge. And then the tree planting was amazing. So we talked about, you know, I was over the wider designs for the space. We'll go through other permutations and more consultation. We really wanted to crack on with tree planting, particularly, you know, when sort of Tony first approached me and Matthew McGrath, our senior tree officer. It was very much about, can we plant more trees on the space? So we were really keen to get some going in this March, and so we asked the question, would people mind if we sort of did that boundary planting? And you can see that people were very, very keen that we did crack on, and we saw that as a great community planting event. Fortunately, with the current restrictions, we've made a decision we won't be able to do that in March. The trees are all ordered, but we've been able to postpone that, put that on hold. So we're looking to do this early in the autumn planting season, COVID allowing. We could put them in with staff or contractors, but we just feel it'd be such a wasted opportunity. And it'd be good to hear your thoughts after the presentation as well. It would be such a wasted opportunity not to be able to have families come down and plant these trees with us. There's a huge mix of different species, native species, which you would find in a sort of natural river floodplain from out into the bend. So good suite of species there. So lots of different heights and diversities. And you'll have also seen, lots of you will probably know Vic Smith, but there is she put out a consultation which was well received for a small solitary bee boat to go just in here, and she is planning to make a start on that in March. But again, hopefully throughout the summer the restrictions will drop off and we can have some volunteers come and help with that also. And that's just some of the species there. So as far as next steps, we've got I've been able to get some funding together to employ Ruth Hawksley, amazing lady who works as the river officer for the local wildlife trust. Some of you I'm sure will know her, and does lots of work on our chalk streams. She was at risk of sort of being furloughed with this current lockdown because she could do her volunteer work. So she has kindly offered to help pull together some of the various surveys and things that we need to inform the feasibility of sort of extending the wetlands. So it's all the hydrology, the service checks, river levels, a lot of which we've already got from the previous works, but pull that together and then work with a specialist a specialist firm like Five Rivers, who did the rush for us at Sheep's Green, and there's many others. So we'll get some quotes to just sort of really look at logistics of what can be done and where they'll be using the consultation as well. So we'll pull together some other different plans, much more detailed deliverable plans, and start to cost them, and then we can come back to you guys initially, and then again to a wider consultation to actually see how we can do it. And then it will be the funding. So there's a range of possibilities. There's obviously the Section 106, which we can make bids for at various cycles. There's environmental improvement schemes. There's with all the awareness now around sort of biodiversity net gain and the emergency. There's potential sponsorship. So I'm quite confident that a sort of community-led, well-supported, deliverable project will be able to secure funding. So yeah, and hopefully you'll be able to be well involved with that. And what am I missing? So the consultation, the funding, the feasibility. I think that's, I've been rambling on. So I think that's kind of, yeah, hopefully painted a good picture.
That was just a great talk. Very inspiring. It's very disappointing that we're not going to be able to put in trees this March. Yeah, there's obviously a part of me which is deeply disappointed about that, but at the same time, the community aspect to this whole project is really, really important, and so I think it's the right decision to delay for 6 months, and it'll make us all the more ready when that time comes around.
Great.
So I wonder if we could all just unmute ourselves for a second, or Margaret, if you can unmute everybody. And we could just give a round of applause to Guy.